anymore. So I pick up the books. Also, another lesson I learned this year was about reconnecting. And this was kind of a hard lesson for me. I'm going to get emotional. My father is 89, and he lives in Leisure World. And when I'm the youngest of 3 children, and there's quite an age span among us. So I spent a lot of time with my dad growing up because my brother and sister were already out of the house. And we lived in Huntington Beach, and my dad always had a cabin cruiser. I wanted to have a fun boat that I could learn to water ski with, but my dad bought a cabin cruiser, so I learned how to put anchovies, live anchovies, on a fish hook, and I did that instead of water skiing. So I spent a lot of time with my dad on the weekends, going out and fishing and just spending time together. And then a lot of times after that, we would go to the movies together and just have a little bite to eat. So I was pretty close with my dad. If you asked me then, I probably would have said no, I wasn't. But I was. I was pretty close to my dad. Then my dad had a stroke about 10 years ago. And he became aphasic, meaning that what his mind is thinking doesn't necessarily come out verbally the same way. So he had quite a problem communicating. And my father is a very articulate man, very, very intelligent, very articulate man. And so that was very hard for him, and it was very hard for us. Then after that, he had been a smoker for basically since he was about 15 years old. He developed throat cancer and had to have his larynx removed. And so he now has a stoma, a hole in his throat. And because he was aphasic in the first place, he couldn't really speak using one of the devices that a lot of people you might see use. So my dad can write, occasionally things will come out correct. But there's still something, up here and with the hands that just don't necessarily come out correctly. So communication with my father became really a chore. It was something that, none of us enjoyed doing. We didn't really want to spend a lot of time with him because it was something we had to work at. So my brother passed away about 2 or 3 years ago. And he used to have breakfast with my dad every Saturday. And I thought, okay, this is my opportunity to reconnect with my dad. I'm going to take that time, and I'm going to go to lunch or breakfast with my dad. Well, I probably told you before that my dad goes to these estate sales in Leisure World because, unfortunately people are always dying in Leisure World. So my dad goes on Thursdays and Fridays to these estate sales. He always seems to buy something. I don't know why, but he always seems to buy something. So I decided, well, if I go with him on Fridays, I can keep him from buying all this stuff that later on my sister and I are going to have to sort through and get rid of. So I started going with my dad, and what do you find out? I enjoyed it. We had quiet breakfast together. But you know what? I'd tell him what was going on in my life. And I felt good doing it. And then we'd go to these estate sales. And as I'm telling him, Dad, don't buy any more of those little figurines. No, don't buy the statues. Stop with the garden stuff. You don't have a garden. Suddenly I'm seeing things that I want to buy. But I'm a little bit more practical. And so since a lot of these people have just passed away, a lot of times they are sick before they pass away. And they will sell everything in their condo, including Band-Aids and all kinds of pads that my dog uses to pee on. All kinds of things, adhesive tapes, all this. And I thought, what a great way to replenish my first aid kit. I could have a year's worth of first aid kit for almost next to nothing. So I started looking out for those items. And one of the great buys, I have to tell you this, we use a cough syrup called Delsum, and it lasts for 12 hours, and it is expensive. It's about $10 or $12 for a large bottle. But this is what really works. And I was at this estate sale and saw a brand new package of this cough syrup, the big package, the orange flavored one, which is the better flavor, for $1.25. I almost had to knock somebody over to get that cough medicine when I saw it. That was my big score for the day. I was so excited. I spent $1.25 on this cough syrup. So, my dad and I have now become estate sale buddies. And I've learned a few things about my dad, too. He actually has a live-in girlfriend. Now, my dad is 89. He's not a member of the church. And he has a live-in girlfriend that takes care of him. And she's a year younger than my sister. So she's 54. So she's 3 years older than I am and a year younger than my sister. But you know what? She takes really good care of my dad. She does all the stuff that we don't want to have to do. The laundry, the grocery shopping, all that. So, okay. You're 89, go for it. I will say, and nobody mentioned this, my sister one day walked in on my dad, used her key, walked in, and found that they were having sex. And my sister, yes, 89 years old, and my sister said, I can't look at my dad the same anymore. So, you know, it's, I guess being Italian has something going for it. Also, another good thing about these breakfasts. This past Friday, I got a phone call while we were at breakfast from my sister. And my dad comes from a large Italian family, 8 kids. And they've all been living these long lives. He has 2 older brothers. My sister called and told me that my Uncle Joe, who was 91, had just passed away. So that gave me the opportunity to, when we went home, I sat my dad down and I was able to tell him that his brother had passed away. So we were going to be making plans to attend that funeral. But what if I hadn't had those breakfasts with my dad? What if I hadn't been there? He'd just be getting this phone call. His girlfriend would have been telling him what's going on. But that way I had a chance to sit there and hold his hand and let him know. And the last area I kind of want to talk about, excuse me. Oh, I do want to mention one thing. You might see this shawl, and this little blue thing is a lap blanket. So I've been picking these up at the estate sales because I know there's a lot of ladies in here that get cold. So I'm going to be bringing lap things and shawls. So if you want to use them, I mean $1 or $2, you know, I'm leaving them here. So if you get cold, you'll have something to put on your legs now. So it does pay to go to these garage sales. Another thing that I learned this year on the spiritual side, I think I told you last year I had the lesson in January, and I said one thing that I wanted to do was try and increase my spirituality. So I was going to really work on it. Now that's kind of a broad statement, and you know when you have broad statements, most of the time it doesn't get done. So I kind of built a little plan for myself. And one of those things, once again, Debbie Crandall said, do you want to go to an Institute class with me? This Institute class that we go to over in Huntington Beach, we go with Chris Wood, is one of the best classes I have ever been in. It's mostly adults our age, and they don't like to teach adults at the Institute. They only like to teach up to 30-year-olds. But this teacher learns from us also, so he loves to teach this class to us. I was amazed at some of the things that I learned. We'll go over in an hour and a half about half a dozen scriptures. And we spend that entire hour and a half talking about this short amount of scriptures and really learning what it actually means. Going in depth. How does it apply to our lives? How does it apply to our Savior? What can we do to bring it into our lives? And it's a fabulous class. So that, I feel, increased my spirituality. Another thing was I opened my mind to the things I was reading. Now, one of my goals was I decided I was going to print out a list of the 100 best novels of all time, and I was going to read those. And these are the 100 best novels as voted by ordinary people like us. You know, not the illiterate that, you know, thinks they know everything, not the New York Times, but just ordinary people like us. So I decided I was going to go through this list and do it. And one of the ways I do it is I download most of the books onto my MP3 player. And as I'm doing things around the house, I'll listen to the book. And I usually will walk my dog for about an hour a day. And so that gives me an hour to listen to the book. Well, one of these novels was The Fountainhead by, yeah, exactly. Some of you know it. Some of you have probably read it. Now, I had not read this before. And she also has another one on here, Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. I don't know that I'm going to read that one. I didn't like The Fountainhead. I discovered that these characters were so flat, and I really couldn't figure out why they were so flat. I didn't like any of these characters in the book. Not one. There was nothing redeeming about any of these people. And it was a thick book, but I managed to listen to the whole thing. I trudged my way through it. And then I found out that Ayn Rand was an atheist. And most of the characters in her book were also atheists. And so suddenly the light bulb goes off. They had no spirituality in their lives. She did not write with any kind of a spiritual awareness of any of these characters. So now I'm looking a little bit more carefully at the things I'm reading, and I'm not going to waste my hours of listening time on books that don't uplift me. Okay, so that's another thing I learned. And one last thing I want to tell you about is, actually two, if I have time. I learned that I need to listen to my body when it listens to the spirit. Now, you're going to say, what does that mean? Well, my body has a really, really difficult time regulating temperature. And I get dehydrated quite easily. And so I can't really be in extreme temperatures of hot or cold. So in November we went to Peru, and we went with the Crandalls and the Pecks. And there was an add-on to go to the Amazon. And they were both going to do this, and I really kind of wanted to go fly over the Nazca lines. I didn't really want to go to the Amazon, to be truthful. And I knew it was going to be hot, but they were saying, oh, this is going to be so wonderful. Oh, and there's a canopy thing. Oh, it's going to be fabulous. So, okay, I decided, okay, we'll go with them to the Amazon, and I'll skip the Nazca lines. Well, it was so dang hot there. The humidity was unreal, right? Humidity was unreal. And one day we had a walk to a lake where we were going to see these lake otters, giant river otters. So I'm walking through there, and I'm just, I could not cool down at all. I mean, I was drinking water, and it kind of started off bad because Deborah Peck squirted me with some citronella spray to keep the bugs away because unfortunately I'd forgotten my malaria medication. So I was wearing long sleeves and long pants anyway. So I'm trudging through this. We get to the lake, and I'm sitting in the boat, and just, you know, I could just feel like I have this fever just coming up through my body. The next thing I know, I've got projectile vomiting going on outside the boat. And then, when we get back, I have to walk all the way back to the boat to get to where we're staying. I was miserable that entire day. And I mean, I was going to bring this picture of me with just towels on with ice down here to try and lower my body temperature. I was just miserable.